I was already inside my house when my phone notified me that I had just arrived home. That's the only way I can explain it. I was in the kitchen, barefoot, rinsing a glass in the sink, when my doorbell app buzzed. Motion detected, front door. Then, a second notification, person identified. I froze. I hadn't left. I'd been home for hours. Slowly, I opened the app. The timestamp read 9:42 p.m. It was 6:38 p.m., 3 hours in the future. The video thumbnail showed someone walking up my driveway. It was me. Same jacket, same scuffed shoes, same uneven stride I've had since I twisted my ankle in college. The camera caught me stepping into frame from the sidewalk, keys already in hand, like someone returning from a long, exhausting night. But I hadn't gone anywhere. I pressed play. The footage rolled smoothly. No glitching, no distortion, just me, approaching the house with a posture that made my stomach turn. My shoulders were slumped, like I was carrying something invisible. My steps slowed near the door. I hesitated before reaching for the handle. And then I looked directly at the camera. Not casually, not accidentally, deliberately. The version of me on that screen held eye contact with the lens for a full 3 seconds. Long enough to register awareness. Long enough to make it clear that whatever that was, it knew it was being watched. It knew I would see it. If this were fake, if this were some elaborate hack or deepfake prank, I wouldn't be calmly explaining it to you. I'd be outside ripping the camera off the wall. I'd be calling the police. I'd be trying to prove it wasn't real. Instead, I'm sitting in my living room, watching footage of myself arriving home at a time that hasn't happened yet. And that isn't even the worst part. The worst part is what I do after I unlock the door. But before I tell you that, you need to understand why I even checked the camera in the first place. I didn't install the doorbell camera because I thought someone was going to replace me. I installed it because someone stole my air fryer. That's it. That's the grand origin story. 2 years ago, a package vanished off my porch sometime between out for delivery and delivered. I came home to an empty mat and a customer service email that might as well have said, "Good luck with that." So I did what every mildly annoyed adult does. I bought a doorbell camera and told myself I was being responsible. Since then, it's been boringly dependable. It catches delivery drivers tossing boxes a little too aggressively. It records my neighbor's golden retriever wandering over and staring at my front door like it owes him money. It alerts me when the mail arrives, when the trash truck rumbles by, when a leaf blows too confidently across the lens. Harmless things. Normal things. I check it the way people check the weather, absently, without fear. A quick glance during lunch. A notification dismissed during meetings. Sometimes I scroll through clips at night out of idle curiosity, watching myself leave for work or return with groceries like I'm observing a nature documentary about suburban life. There's something comforting about it. Proof. Proof that the world is behaving predictably. Proof that time moves forward the way it's supposed to. Proof that I left at 8:12 a.m. and returned at 6:03 p.m. and nothing extraordinary happened in between. The system has never been wrong. Not once. No phantom alerts. No unexplained figures. No corrupted timestamps. Even when the Wi-Fi goes down, it tells me immediately. Even when the power flickers, it logs the interruption. It is, ironically, the least dramatic piece of technology in my house. I've joked before that the camera exists to validate my mild paranoia. Not the fun, cinematic kind, just the everyday kind. Did I lock the door? Did that car slow down too much? Did someone walk up the driveway? Tap the app. There's the answer. Most of the time it's nothing. A shadow. A passing dog. A package. A delivery confirmation. Predictable. That predictability matters more than people realize. We outsource a small portion of our sanity to these systems. We trust them to confirm that reality matches memory. We assume that if something impossible happens, the footage will expose it as a trick of the light or a glitch in our perception. That's the unspoken contract. The tech watches so we don't have to. And until that night, it had never betrayed me. Never shown me something that couldn't be explained. Never contradicted the clock on my wall. Never insisted on a version of events that I knew, absolutely knew, hadn't happened. Which is why the notification didn't scare me at first. It annoyed me. I remember glancing at my phone and rolling my eyes. Probably a moth triggering motion detection. Maybe my neighbor cutting across the yard again. I opened the app expecting to dismiss it in 5 seconds. Instead, I watched myself walk up to my own front door 3 hours in the future. And that was the first time the system didn't just observe reality. It rewrote it. My phone buzzed while I was brushing my teeth. Motion detected, front door. I remember staring at the notification through the bathroom mirror, toothpaste foam at the corner of my mouth, mildly irritated. I was already home. I'd locked the door myself. I'd even checked it twice out of habit. Another buzz. Person identified. That part made me frown. The system only sends that alert when it's confident. When it recognizes a familiar face. Usually mine. I rinsed my mouth, wiped my hands on a towel, and opened the app. The live feed loaded instantly. Empty porch. The welcome mat sat exactly where it always does. The potted plant leaned slightly left like it always has. The streetlight cast the same dull amber glow across the concrete. Nothing moved. I felt that small, automatic relief you get when technology overreacts. Probably a lighting glitch. A passing car's headlights confusing the AI. Then I noticed the timestamp. 9:42 p.m. It was 6:41. 3 hours ahead. I checked my phone's clock. 6:41 p.m. I checked the microwave. 6:41. The oven. 6:41. The app insisted it was almost 10 at night. I exited and reopened it. Still 9:42 p.m. The live feed continued to show nothing. No shadow. No person. No glitching distortion. Just absence. A thought crept in. Maybe it wasn't live. Maybe I was looking at a clip. I tapped the event history. There it was. 9:42 p.m. Person detected. Recognized. You. I didn't press play right away. There's a strange hesitation that happens when your brain encounters something it can't categorize. It stalls. It looks for an easy explanation. It searches for a technical fault. But there wasn't one staring back at me. So I pressed play. The driveway appeared. The sidewalk. And then, me, walking into frame from the left. That's my face, I whispered. But that's not my night. The jacket was the one I'd worn earlier that day. The same dark canvas with the loose thread near the pocket. The same scuffed sneakers. But the way I moved was wrong. Slower. Heavier. Like I was coming back from something that had drained me. I watched myself approach the porch steps. My head tilted slightly downward, not looking at my phone like I usually do. Not scanning the street. Just focused. Intent. I stopped at the door. Paused. And then, faintly, so faintly I had to turn up the volume, I heard something. Muttering. The microphone picked it up in fragments. Don't remember. Not supposed to. Already inside. My stomach dropped. I hadn't said those words. I hadn't even thought them. The version of me on the screen leaned closer to the door as if listening for something on the other side. As if someone was already inside. The audio distorted slightly when I reached for the handle. But I caught one more phrase before the clip ended. Just act normal. I replayed it 3 times. The muttering didn't change. The posture didn't change. The hesitation didn't change. I checked the live feed again. Still empty porch. Still 9:42 p.m. in the corner. And in my living room, it was still 6:47. What was I coming back from? I asked out loud. The question echoed strangely in the quiet house. Because if that was me arriving at 9:42, then where had I been between now and then? And why did future me sound like someone trying to convince himself he belonged inside? I set the phone down on the coffee table and stared at the clock on the wall. 6:49 p.m. If the timestamp was real, if the system wasn't wrong, then in less than 3 hours, I was going to walk up that driveway. And I was going to say things I don't remember thinking. So I did the only thing that made any sense. I waited for the timestamp to catch up. Time becomes elastic when you're waiting for yourself to show up. At first, I tried to act normal. I made coffee I didn't need. I folded laundry that didn't require folding. I turned on the television and muted it almost immediately because the noise felt intrusive, like it might interfere with whatever was about to happen. 6:58 p.m. I replayed the clip. There I was again, approaching the driveway, shoulders rounded, steps deliberate. The pause at the door, the muttering. Already inside. The words felt heavier each time. 7:12 p.m. I stood in the living room and looked at the front door. From inside, it looked completely harmless. Standard wood panel, brass handle, deadbolt I'd installed myself. The doorbell camera mounted just above eye level, its tiny lens black and unreadable. I imagined the version of me on the footage standing right there on the other side, listening. 7:26 p.m. I checked the event history again. The clip hadn't changed. That was important. If this was a glitch, it would degrade, corrupt, update, correct itself. But it didn't. It just waited. 7:40 p.m. I watched it again, this time slower, analyzing details like I was studying surveillance footage of a stranger. The jacket. At first glance, it was identical. But when I zoomed in, the loose thread near the pocket was gone. Not trimmed. Gone. The sneakers were scuffed in the same places, but there was a dark smear along the sole that I didn't recognize. Something sticky looking, almost like mud. I checked my own shoes. Clean. My breathing picked up, so I focused on the audio again. Future me sounded winded. Not dramatically, just slightly. Like someone who had been walking for a long time. Or running. 7:59 p.m. The house felt smaller. Every tick of the wall clock landed too hard in the silence. I turned off the lights in the living room so I could see outside more clearly. The street was quiet. A car passed once. A dog barked 2 houses down. Nothing unusual. I positioned myself a few feet from the door, far enough that I wouldn't be immediately visible if someone looked through the peephole. 8:17 p.m. I replayed the clip again. This time I noticed something new. When future me paused at the door, he didn't just hesitate. He leaned in slightly, like he was listening for movement inside, like he knew someone was already home. 8:46 p.m. I stopped pacing. The anxiety had shifted from sharp to dull, like a pressure headache settling in behind my eyes. I opened the live feed. Empty porch. Timestamp now reading 8:46 p.m. It had finally synchronized. No more future clock, just real time, which meant I had less than an hour. 9:03 p.m. I stood directly behind the door now, heart beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I didn't know what my plan was. Confront him? Hide? Speak first? What do you say to yourself? 9:21 p.m. I opened the clip one more time. Still the same. The driveway. The walk. The muttering. Just act normal. 9:38 p.m. 3 minutes. The streetlight flickered once. I held my breath. 9:41 p.m. Nothing. 9:42 p.m. I stared at the door. Waited for footsteps on concrete. Waited for the faint crunch of gravel. Waited for the shadow to move beneath the door frame. Silence. No knock. No handle turning. No muttering. The porch light remained still. I counted to 60. Then another 60. 9:44 p.m. I opened the live feed. Empty. No motion alert. No person detected. The event log showed the same clip from earlier, but there was no new recording. I stood there, frozen, trying to process what that meant. If the footage was a prediction, It was wrong. If it was a recording, it hadn't happened. But the clip hadn't changed. It hadn't disappeared. It hadn't corrected itself. It just existed, like a memory from a night that refused to occur. 9:51 p.m. My knees felt weak, so I stepped back from the door. Maybe it was over. Maybe the system had glitched and corrected before it became real. Maybe I'd just spent 3 hours terrorizing myself over corrupted metadata. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all night. And that's when my phone buzzed again. Not from the front door. From the backyard camera. Motion detected. Rear entrance. I turned slowly toward the hallway that led deeper into the house. Another notification followed immediately. New event uploaded. I didn't want to open it, but I did. And what I saw made the first clip look like a warning. Because this one didn't show me arriving. It showed me leaving. I didn't sleep. After the backyard clip, after watching myself step out of the rear door at 2:13 a.m., glance over my shoulder like someone was watching, and disappear into darkness, I did the only thing left to do. I scrolled. At first, I thought I was looking for reassurance. Proof that this had started tonight. That this was isolated. It wasn't. The event logs stretched back months. I filtered by person detected. Dozens of entries loaded. More than I remembered. I tapped one at random. October 14th, 11:58 p.m. Recognized. You. It was July. I pressed play. There I was again. Walking up the driveway in a coat I didn't own. The timestamp was months ahead. The leaves on the trees were different. Bare branches instead of summer green. I checked the date twice. October 14th. It hadn't happened yet. I backed out and opened another. August 2nd, 3:07 a.m. Recognized. You. That was 3 weeks from now. In the clip, I wasn't arriving. I was standing perfectly still on the porch. Not knocking. Not unlocking the door. Just standing there. Looking straight into the camera. Aware. My mouth moved, but there was no audio this time. Just a silent message I couldn't hear. My skin prickled. I've been coming home wrong for months, I whispered. And not just arriving. Leaving. Lurking. Listening. There were clips of me stepping out at impossible hours. Clips of me returning at times I was provably asleep inside. Clips of me pacing the porch like I was deciding whether I was allowed in. Patterns emerged the longer I watched. The earlier clips, the ones dated weeks ahead, showed confusion, hesitation, subtle fear. But the further out I went, the calmer I looked. In a clip dated December 3rd, 9:42 p.m., I approached the door with steady confidence. No slumped shoulders, no muttering. I stopped directly in front of the lens and smiled. Not wide, not friendly, just knowing, like someone who understood something I didn't. In another clip, January 11th, 1:16 a.m., I leaned toward the camera and tapped the lens gently with one finger. The image distorted slightly on impact. Then I mouthed 3 words. I rewound it 6 times before I was sure. Stop watching me. My throat tightened, because that didn't feel like paranoia. It felt reciprocal, like there were 2 versions of me now, one inside the house, one outside it. Crossing paths through recordings instead of reality. I scrolled further. The timestamps extended impossibly far. March, April, dates nearly a year ahead. And in those later clips, something had changed again. I wasn't just aware of the camera. I was interacting with it. In one, I adjusted it slightly, angling the lens downward. In another, I wiped rain off the glass and stared into it long enough to feel confrontational. The most disturbing one was dated May 22nd, 6:41 p.m., the exact time it had been when I first received the notification. In that clip, future me stepped into frame, looked directly at the camera, and shook his head slowly. Then he held up his phone. The screen glowed bright, facing the lens. On it was the same Doorbell app, the same live feed, but the figure standing on the porch wasn't him. It was someone inside the house, watching. The clip ended there. I dropped the phone onto the couch like it had burned me. This wasn't random corruption. It wasn't a single anomaly. It was a layered timeline, overlapping, bleeding, like the camera had been recording not just what was happening, but what would happen, or what could. Maybe every version of me that ever stood at that door existed simultaneously somewhere in the system. Maybe the camera wasn't broken. Maybe it was ahead, or behind, or sideways, capturing arrivals from timelines that hadn't aligned yet. And the longer I watched, the clearer the progression became. At first, I was confused, then cautious, then aware, then deliberate. And in the furthest clips, the ones dated nearly a year from now, I wasn't arriving at all. I was already inside. The footage would start with the door slightly ajar, and me stepping out, like I'd always been there, like the house had chosen which version stayed. My hands trembled as I scrolled back to tonight's date. The present. But the present didn't feel stable anymore. It felt like a thin seam between overlapping recordings. I was so focused on the screen that I didn't notice the sound at first. A soft knock. Not from the front door. From inside the house. 3 gentle taps. From the hallway wall behind me. And then my phone buzzed again. Not with a motion alert. Not with a person detected. But with a notification I had never seen before. Shared access granted. Someone else had just been given control of my camera. And I hadn't done it. I avoided my neighbors for 2 days. Not intentionally. Just strategically. If I didn't talk to anyone, no one could confirm anything. No one could tell me they'd seen something they shouldn't have. But paranoia has a way of forcing encounters. I was taking the trash out when Mrs. Alvarez from next door waved at me over the hedge. "Burning the midnight oil again," she called casually. My stomach dropped. "What?" She smiled the way neighbors do when they think they're making harmless conversation. "You were out pretty late the other night. Everything okay?" The air felt thin. I wasn't out late. She tilted her head slightly. "Sure you were. Tuesday. Around, I don't know, close to 10? You walked up from the sidewalk. Looked exhausted. Tuesday, 9:42 p.m. The clip. That's not possible," I said, too quickly. She frowned. "I was watering the plants. You almost startled me. Didn't even say hi, which is unusual for you." My pulse pounded in my ears. What was I wearing? She blinked at the question. "Your dark jacket. The canvas one. And those sneakers you always wear. Anything else?" She hesitated. "You looked upset." "Upset how?" "Like someone coming back from bad news." She studied my face. "Are you sure you're okay?" I forced a laugh that didn't land. "Yeah, just tired." But I wasn't listening to her anymore. I was replaying the footage in my head. The slumped shoulders. The hesitation at the door. The muttering. Mrs. Alvarez stepped a little closer to the hedge. "You stood there for a second before unlocking the door." I remember because I thought maybe you'd forgotten your keys. I felt cold all over. "That's my face," I whispered before I could stop myself. "What?" "Nothing. Sorry." "You said I unlocked the door?" "Yeah," she said slowly. "You went inside." The words landed like a dropped plate. "You saw me go in." "Yes." Now she looked concerned. "You okay?" Because that was the difference. The camera had shown me arriving. But at 9:42 p.m., I had been inside the house already. If she saw me unlock the door and enter, then which one of us had been in here? I swallowed hard. Did I say anything? She thought for a moment. "You look like you were talking to yourself." My throat tightened. "Don't remember. Just act normal." Her description matched the audio exactly. Down to the pause. Down to the way I leaned toward the door like I was listening for movement. "You didn't wave back when I said hello," she added softly. "You just stared at the door camera for a second, like you knew it was recording." The hedge between us suddenly felt paper thin. This wasn't just digital anymore. It wasn't corrupted timestamps or overlapping data. She saw him. She saw me. Physically. On the driveway, under the same street light I'd been staring at while waiting for something that never arrived. Private terror had just become public confirmation. You must have imagined it, I said weakly. Mrs. Alvarez shook her head. Honey, I know what I saw. There was no accusation in her tone, just certainty. You walked in, closed the door. Porch light turned off. My breathing felt uneven, because I hadn't turned the porch light off that night. It had stayed on. I remember checking. So I went inside. I repeated quietly, yes. And you didn't see me come back out? No, she said. Should I have? I didn't answer, because if she hadn't seen me leave, then the version of me that arrived that night never left through the front door. He had gone somewhere else, or he had stayed. Mrs. Alvarez studied my face one more time. If something's wrong, you can tell me. Something was wrong, but not in a way she could help with. Thanks, I said. It's just work stuff. She nodded slowly, unconvinced. As I dragged the trash bin back toward my house, I felt it differently. Not like a home, like a checkpoint. A place where one version of me had been allowed in, and the other had not. When I stepped inside, I locked the door carefully. Then I checked the app. No new notifications, but the shared access alert from earlier was still there, active. And at the top of the screen, beneath my account name, a second user had appeared. Recognized, you. Once something impossible becomes real, your brain does what it always does. It looks for rules. Chaos is unbearable. Patterns are survivable. So I started cataloging everything. Every clip, every timestamp, every neighbor sighting, every notification. And slowly, terrifyingly, the pattern sharpened. Rule 1. The arrivals only happen when I am not actively watching. The first time, I opened the app after the notification. I saw the future. But when 9:42 p.m. actually arrived, nothing happened. Because I was waiting, watching, present. But Mrs. Alvarez saw him, which means he arrived when I wasn't looking at the door, when my attention slipped. Rule 2. Attempts to stay home don't matter. I tested it. The next night, I stayed glued to the couch. Didn't shower. Didn't brush my teeth. Didn't even step into the hallway. I kept the live feed open on my phone for hours. Nothing happened. No motion. No future timestamp. But the next morning, a new clip had appeared in the archive. 11:13 p.m. Recognized, you. I hadn't received a notification. I hadn't seen it live. But there it was. Future me walking up the driveway again. The system didn't care whether I physically stayed inside. It only cared whether I was aware. Rule 3. The footage updates after acceptance. To someone behind it. Rule 4. Though I hate calling it that, there is always someone watching. If I monitor the camera obsessively, the arrival happens later. If I ignore it, the arrival moves closer. Like it's calibrating to my level of resistance. Adapting. Learning. I tried the most obvious solution one afternoon. I removed the doorbell camera completely, unscrewed it from the wall, powered it down, set it on the kitchen table. No lens, no recording, no access. For 12 peaceful hours, nothing happened. Then, at 6:41 p.m., exactly when this began, my phone buzzed. Not from the app, from my photo gallery. New media added. I opened it slowly. A video file. No app watermark. No interface. Just raw footage. From the angle where the camera used to be. The porch. The driveway. And me. Standing there. Looking directly into the empty space where the lens had been. Smiling faintly. As if I didn't need the camera anymore. Because something else was recording now. And at the bottom of the screen, burned into the video itself, was a timestamp. Not a date. Not a time. Just a countdown. 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Decreasing. The countdown hit 0 at 9:42 p.m. There was no sound when it happened. No explosion. No flicker of lights. Just a new video file appearing in my gallery. No notification tone. No vibration. just presence. The file name was simple, arrival_final.mp4. My hands felt steady when I opened it. That's the strange part. By then, terror had thinned into something quieter. Not acceptance exactly, but inevitability. The footage began the same way all the others had. Driveway, streetlight, amber glow across concrete. Then me, walking into frame. But this time there was no hesitation in my steps. No slumped shoulders. No muttering. I moved slowly, deliberately, like someone approaching a meeting they had already agreed to. I stopped at the base of the porch steps and looked up, not at the door, at the camera, at me. For a moment, neither of us moved. The version on screen tilted his head slightly, studying the lens the way you might study a mirror. Then he climbed the steps. No pause at the door this time. No listening for movement inside. He already knew. He stood inches from the camera, close enough that I could see faint lines under his eyes I didn't yet have. Close enough that I could see he looked calmer than I felt. He reached forward, not to cover the lens, not to adjust it, just to steady himself against the wall beside it. And then he spoke, clearly, no distortion, no static. "I know you're watching." My breath caught. His voice was mine, but deeper somehow. "Warren, I'm sorry," he said. Not hurried, not panicked, just sincere. I tried to delay it. I thought if I stayed inside long enough, if I kept the feed open, if I paid attention, it wouldn't happen. He gave a faint, humorless smile. "That's not how it works." I leaned closer to the screen without realizing it. Future me glanced briefly at the door, then back at the camera. "You don't understand it yet. You think this is about duplication, about something replacing you." He shook his head gently. "It's not replacing." A pause. "It's sinking." My stomach dropped. "When you arrive late enough," he continued, "there isn't a second version anymore. There's just the one that stayed." The porch light flickered once above him. He didn't react. "You're not watching your future," he said quietly. "You're watching your handoff." My pulse pounded in my ears. Every clip you saw, every arrival, that was alignment. Gradual, necessary. He leaned slightly closer. "And when you stop fighting it, when you finally accept it, that's when the timelines stop overlapping." His eyes softened. "That's when I get to come inside." Silence stretched between us. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. "I know you're scared," he said. I was too, but the fear only stretches it out. The more you resist, the more versions stack up. He gestured faintly toward the street behind him. "You've probably already noticed. The neighbors only see one of us at a time. The system only recognizes one of us at a time. The house only holds one of us at a time." My throat felt dry. "What happens to the other?" I whispered at the screen, as if he could hear me. He smiled sadly. "You already know." He stepped back from the camera. For a second, I thought the clip would end there. But instead of turning toward the door, he looked past the lens, directly into the house, directly into where I was sitting, and his expression shifted. Not to anger, not to urgency, to relief. "It's almost time," he said softly. Then he reached for the door handle, and the clip cut to black before it turned. No confirmation, no entry, just absence. The file ended. My living room was silent. The wall clock read 9:41 p.m., 1 minute before the time stamped on the video. Outside, beneath the amber streetlight, footsteps touched the driveway. It wasn't dramatic. That's the part that still unsettles me. There was no car accident, no dead phone, no locked highway. I was late because I stopped for gas, because I answered one email in the parking lot, because I stood in line behind someone arguing over expired coupons. Mundane delays, forgettable choices. At 8:57 p.m., I was exactly 12 minutes from home. At 9:08 p.m., I decided to grab a coffee I didn't need. At 9:17 p.m., I missed the green light I always catch. Tiny things. But time isn't made of big events. It's made of small hesitations. By 9:39 p.m., I was turning onto my street. 3 minutes late. The streetlight hummed above the driveway. Amber glow. Stillness. And for a split second, I thought, maybe it won't match. Maybe I've shifted it. Maybe I broke the alignment. Then I saw him. Me. Standing at the base of the porch steps. Exactly where the footage had shown. Same posture. Same angle. Same slow, deliberate breath before moving. My headlights washed over him. Over me. And he didn't flinch. Didn't shield his eyes. Didn't step aside. He simply turned his head and looked at the car. At me behind the windshield. There was no aggression in his expression. No confusion. Just recognition. Like two reflections finally lining up. I stepped out of the car because the footage said I would. Because once it matches, it can't be undone. That was the rule I'd never wanted to admit. The air felt heavy, dense, like walking through a room where music had just stopped. He climbed the porch steps. I followed, each footstep echoing the clip I had memorized. He reached the door. I reached the bottom step. And then something shifted. Not outside. Inside. The world didn't split. It folded. I didn't see two versions of us. I felt one. Like a migraine building behind the eyes. Like a memory snapping into place that had always been there. He didn't open the door. He waited. Because that's when I reached the porch. That's when the alignment completed. And suddenly I understood what he had meant. It wasn't about replacing. It wasn't about one surviving. It was about continuity. The version that arrives is the version that continues. The version that's late becomes the memory. I felt it happening in layers. Thoughts overlapping. Sensations merging. The sound of my own breathing coming from two directions, and then one. Fear dissolving into something smoother. Simpler. Acceptance versus terror. Terror fractures. Acceptance integrates. No. I turned the handle. The door opened inward. And stepping across that threshold felt wrong. Not physically. Existentially. The living room looked identical. Couch. Lamp. Clock on the wall reading 9:42 p.m. But the perspective felt shifted by a few inches. Like the house had already adjusted to someone slightly ahead of me. Because it had. Memories rearranged in real time. Clips I had watched became things I remembered doing. The forum posts? I remembered deleting them. The camera removal? I remembered reinstalling it. The apology video? I remembered recording it. There was no violent collapse. No blackout. Just a settling. Like two puzzle pieces locking together. And in that final instant, before the distinction disappeared completely, I realized something that hadn't been in any footage. The late version always feels like the original. Until it doesn't. And now, sitting in this house, writing this, I'm not entirely sure which one I was.